We're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. My name is Gabe Gavin. I'm President and CEO of Kleberg Bank. And on behalf of our Board of Directors, our shareholders, King Ranch family members present here tonight, advisory board members, and our Kleberg Bank team, I would like to welcome you tonight to what we're calling our community celebration. I'd like to briefly recognize a few important people who are gathered here this evening. Our Kleberg Bank Board of Directors, if you'll just wave. Our chairman, who I'll introduce here shortly, Mr. Stuart Armstrong. Vice Chairman Joe Hinkle. John Alexander. Luke Womack. And Linda Hahn. I would also like to recognize and express my appreciation to the Kleberg Bank Executive Management Team who are gathered here this evening. Brad Womack, our Kingsville Market President and Chief Operating Officer. Go ahead, you can capture that. Travis Nelson, our Chief Financial Officer. Jackie Ilse, Executive Vice President of Risk Management. And there's a special guest this evening, our retired CFO, Fred Woolman. Where are you, Fred? Mr. Woolman was instrumental in starting this project, and we're extremely pleased to have him here tonight. I'd also like to recognize our architect, Philip Ramirez, with Turner Ramirez Architects. Our general contractor, Chris Hamilton, and the Victory Building team. Our graphic artist who designed all this really beautiful graphic art here in our atrium, Mr. Gilbert Cantu. And Bibi Dykema for assistance with interior design. Robert Justice Kleberg, the son-in-law to Captain and Mrs. King, and general manager of the King Ranch, founded Kleberg Bank in Kingsville, Texas in 1905, 113 years ago, to, quote, support those who showed the spirit of cooperation in community building. At Kleberg Bank, we're extremely proud to represent his vision of a strong future for our region, as represented by the bank that bears his name here today. Mr. Kleberg was known as the developer, the builder, the experimenter, the expander. He was a regional leader well ahead of his time. To think that today, in our community, throughout our region, we continue to be challenged with reliable water resources, transportation, and the development of sustainable jobs in our community. Over a century ago, using technology and drilling equipment, Mr. Kleberg drilled the first deep artesian well on the King Ranch. We have a bronze statue at our main banking center here depicting him standing next to Mrs. King in our new lobby here as you enter the building. It was long a vision of Captain and Mrs. King. He successfully developed a reliable water source in South Texas that changed the landscape of our communities forever. That water brought steam for the railroad and led to the development of the St. Louis-Brownsville, Mexico Railway. The Caller Times reported that Mr. Kleberg was honored as one of the founders of our deep water port. The Nueces County Historical Commission stated that Mr. Kleberg, quote, conducted one of the most unified, local, enthusiastic campaigns ever conducted in Texas to establish our deep water port. He and his wife, Alice Gertrudis King Kleberg, and his mother-in-law, Mrs. Henrietta King, were all instrumental in the development of Spahn Hospital that sits on Shoreline Drive today. Mrs. King having donated those original acres for the hospital. We're extremely proud of his touch and his handprint in our community. And today we are very proud that Mr. Robert Justice Kleberg's name is in our building, in our communities, and alive and well, in the same spirit of innovation and community building is represented here today as we celebrate this new investment in our Corpus Christi community. Having been born and raised in this beautiful city, I'm both humbled and proud to have been given the opportunity to lead Kleberg Bank and a dedicated group of professionals, my Kleberg Bank team. We pledge to continue to live up to Mr. Kleberg's vision of community building that he spoke of over a century ago. At this time, I am pleased to introduce the Kleberg Bank, our chairman of Kleberg Bank, Mr. Stuart Armstrong. Mr. Armstrong was born in Corpus Christi and raised in Kingsville. He attended the Deerfield Academy and the University of Texas at Austin, hook 'em horns. A finance major, he was elected as director of Kleberg and Company Bankers in 1979 and of Kleberg Bank in 1989. He was elected chairman of the board of directors of Kleberg Bank in 1990. He presently serves as chairman of the Santa Gertrudis Heritage Society, a committee of King Ranch family members dealing with heritage issues and family access to King Ranch Inc. He's a manager of Armstrong Minerals Managers LP, overseeing the mineral interests of the Armstrong Ranch. He's currently an officer and director of the United States Polo Association, the governing body of polo and the owner of the global brand and licensing business for the United States Polo Association. He has a broad range of experience in diverse business, in agriculture, oil and gas exploration, light manufacturing, and equity investments. He previously served as a director of King Ranch Oil and Gas and of King Ranch Inc. He's married to his lovely wife, Catherine C.C. Wittenberg, in 1979. They have 3 beautiful children who are here this evening, 2 son-in-laws and 6 grandchildren. Stuart is an avid polo player. He's good, having played competitively since 1969 and reaching a 7 handicap at his peak. I can't even say anything about my golf game, nonetheless that. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to present to you tonight Mr. Stuart Armstrong.
Thank you, and I want to take my turn to thank all of y'all for taking time out of your schedules to come help celebrate our new chapter at Kleberg Bank, and talk to Gabe a little bit about, you know, what do we need to talk to this group about? And he said, well, there's a lot of interest in finding out who owns Kleberg Bank, he said. So what I'd like to do to start with is I'd like, if you're a shareholder, I'd like you to raise your hand up real high. Okay. That's the beginning of the answer. The shareholders are largely descendants of Robert Kleberg. They're not all of his descendants, but a subset really. And to explain the full answer to that question, I'd like to just refer to the murals that we have here behind me. The first part of the answer is we wanted to make a great impression. We wanted to raise our profile. We wanted this building to have impact. We wanted it to be striking, and we wanted people to really have the right feeling about what we were trying to accomplish. And so the first part of the answer is aesthetics. The second part of the answer is inspiration. We wanted the mural to depict events in Robert Kleberg's life that were inspiring for all of us who work to make the bank a success and to abide by the mantra that Gabe just described. And so there are a lot of words that are used to describe Robert Kleberg, and one is innovation. Certainly he was innovative. Another word used to describe him, not so much by others, but it's a phrase really coined and taught to me by my Aunt Helenita, and it's tenacity of purpose. Robert Kleberg had tenacity of purpose. And then the third thing that the mural says to me is it speaks to his humble spirit of service to the communities that he's involved with. Those are important attributes that are the manifestation of some principal tenets in his mind, in his life. I don't think he was thinking about, well, I've got to wake up today and be innovative, or I don't think he was thinking about, I've got to be energized and I've got to work really hard just for work's sake. I think there are a few things that were in his mind which I'd like to share with you. I think the first one is a passage that says, whosoever is, how's it go? Whosoever is the beneficiary of gifts, to whomsoever, I can't remember, to whomsoever is given something, much is required. I think he fully subscribed to that. And I think he thought about it in all of his obligations. The other thing I think he thought about was a mantra that Helenita also talked to me about from her father's sake, that said, make no excuses in your pursuit of excellence. I think Robert Kleberg very much had that in mind as well. And so when I see the murals, I think of the kinds of things that he was thinking, and I hope that those are inspirational to the family, to the directors, to the management, the employees, and to the citizenry and customers. Now, the third part of the answer about who owns Kleberg Bank is probably the most important. I've been doing this job for a while now, and I thought for the longest time that the shareholders own the bank. And they do own the bank in the sense that they have the legal rights to the shares and the financial interest is theirs. But every decision that I think I've ever made in my role as chairman reflected on what Robert Kleberg had in mind when he started his bank. Okay? And I said his bank. And that's the message I want to convey is this is Robert Kleberg's bank. Just like Caesar Kleberg founded his Wildlife Research Institute and has a legacy in that respect, Robert Kleberg, his legacy is this bank. And we are still following his directives, his energy, his focus to make no excuses and to give because we're able to give and have the capacity to give. So that's really the message I wanted to relay. The other thing I would say to add to what Gabe has already said is that no business in any community has as much opportunity to do good for everyone as a bank. A bank, it's all about trust. And given the cooperation of the leadership, a bank can have tremendous impact. So where I feel we are today is we've upped our presence, but we've also built a management team, which we've put Gabe in charge, and I think Gabe has all the tools and skill set to take full advantage of that opportunity and to make the most of Kleberg Bank, not only for the shareholders and not only for the citizens and not only for Kleberg Bank, but for Robert Kleberg rather, but for everyone concerned. So that's my message. Now, my Aunt Helenita is Robert Kleberg's granddaughter, and she has been unwittingly a mentor of mine all of my life. She's full of wisdom and a great personality. And I've asked her to speak a little bit about the family's involvement in Corpus, but what I really want is for you to meet her and understand the kind of character and personality that she has, because I think that also will inspire your trust and confidence in those of us that are trying to do what's right by Robert Kleberg and Corpus Christi. So without much ado, I could give you a list of all of her accomplishments, which are significant, but I know she's ready and anxious to talk, so I'm going to let her up here now. Thank you.
Well, this is certainly a great honor. I'm 90 plus, and I am the eldest in my generation. In fact, the only. So I hope you'll bear with me. I want to thank Stuart, who has worked with the bank, and my son, John Alexander, who brought me down and who has been on the board of the bank for many years. I grew up on King Ranch, and in those days it was quite different. We're all standing here in very nice air conditioning, and we've had drinks with ice. You know, in those days, drinks with ice was something very special. Radios belonged to the grown-ups when I was little. That was because they had a lot of tubes in them, and if you messed with them and didn't know what you were doing, it required having somebody come a long way to try to fix the thing. We did have telephones. You had to crank the phone on the wall, and mostly there were a lot of other people on the phone too. Probably some of you remember that age, but I don't know how many of you remember when we didn't have television, we didn't have radios, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have very good roads. In fact, the journey from Kingsville to Corpus was an extensive one, which ladies did not take alone. By the time I was 15, yes, I was driving to Corpus to my cousin Alice, and we were going sailing. I did call home to say I got there safely. So things changed rather rapidly during the Second World War. I was not alive when Mrs. King was alive, let alone her husband, Captain King, although people try to place me back there. I do know that Mrs. King backed Mr. Kleberg on all sorts of ventures. One of the ventures, of course, was Captain King wanted to see a railroad from Corpus Christi to Brownsville. One of the earliest things that he did was to go horseback from Brownsville, probably a roundabout way, camping at Santa Gertrudis by the creek, and coming to the World's Fair here in Corpus Christi, put on by Mr. Kinney. How many of you know that there is a county, Kinney County, named after that family? Anybody know that? Well, there is. I'm not quite sure where it is. But Captain King died quite early. He had a really, really hard life, and he lived hard, and that cost him. My grandmother, Alice King, married Robert Kleberg. Her father had met Kleberg when they were on opposite sides in a court battle in Corpus Christi. something about land. I'm not quite sure what. Titles were in great dispute in those days. Remember, we live under Texas under 6 flags, so it's not surprising. But anyway, Captain King went around after he was defeated by Kleberg in this lawsuit, introduced himself and invited Kleberg to the ranch. And soon he asked him to be on a retainer. Well, he also had him for lunch, maybe for dinner too. And Alice met him, and she was enchanted by his red beard. I never saw a picture of him with a beard, but I guess he had one because she said so. Anyway, they had 5 children, and one of them was my father. One of them was Richard Kleberg, who represented this area ably in Congress for many years. He was a Democrat. How things have changed. My mother's father, Philip Campbell, was a starving young man, I mean literally starving, and took turns with his brother going to school to learn to read and write, and eventually they both read law. And my grandfather was able to go as a congressman elected by people in Kansas. So my mother was raised Republican. My father was raised Democrat. We had a lot of happy discussion in our household. I want to go back to Mrs. King, who I didn't know. I don't think she was still here. I know she wasn't for the Depression we think of, but there was one before that. And she had helped Kleberg start the bank and named it for it in Kingsville. And when they had the first Depression, 1917, before the one that came on and caused everybody a lot of trouble, she did not ever close the bank. She told him, no, when they were going to close the banks all over the country, she said, our bank will stay open. I never did forget that. Kleberg Bank always stayed open. We've had a long connection with Corpus Christi, and today I've had a very happy day coming down here with my son who's on the board. He said, Mother, you'll be bored to tears sitting around while I go to a bank meeting. I said, not at all. I want to go to the museum and to the aquarium. My goodness, what wonderful places you have, and what wonderful future you have with the deep port coming, which my grandfather, Robert Kleberg Sr., was so anxious to see. Thank you very much.
Big step there. Wasn't that a treat? Thank you, Mrs. Groves. We're extremely proud of the legacy of your grandfather and certainly the family and their mark in our community. At this time, it wouldn't be a community event if we didn't do something special to represent our stewardship. Tonight, I'd like to ask Dr. Marcus Camilla, Del Mar College President and CEO, to the stage, We're up front here, and Mary McQueen, Executive Director of Development for Del Mar College Foundation. And we have Sandra Messbarger, a Regent with Del Mar College as well, joining us. I have participated as a board member of Del Mar College Foundation for several years, and I've seen firsthand how this community college has been educating students in our region. Founded in 1935, the Corpus Christi community's only community college has been providing a pathway to affordable post-secondary education and skilled training programs in our community. The college serves 25,000 credit and non-credit students each year with a mission to provide affordable access to quality education and workforce preparation. 85% of Del Mar College students come from South Texas and remain in our community. Mark and I were at an Exxon event last night, and I can tell you, speaking to our friends in industry, that they look to our community college to help educate and train the future workers of our community for tomorrow. Mr. Escamilla, President Escamilla, is a great friend, an inaugural member of our Corpus Christi Advisory Board, and I can tell you firsthand, with 10 years, his tenure of our college, he's been a tremendous leader that's created an excitement that our industry leaders are getting excited about as well. So tonight, Mark, if you want to say a few words on behalf of Kleberg Bank, we are pleased to present you and Del Mar College Foundation with a check for $50,000 to create a workforce.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me in the back? We okay? To say it's an honor to be up here with the Kleberg family is an understatement. I'm a local kid, born and raised here in Corpus Christi, and to have been at the helm of my alma mater for the past 10 years, almost 10 years now, has been another honor that is just really hard to fathom and describe. But first and foremost, to the Kleberg family, thank you so much. Your generosity will be felt for a long time to come as it will nurture our students for generations. Many of those students who are those first generation students, such as myself, such as Regent Sandra Messbarger, who is also a student here at Del Mar College. And this sort of affirmation and support goes a very long way in a community college whose philosophical underpinnings are based and built upon affordability. And since we are largely first generation, our students are largely first generation, in other words, those first in their families to attain a level of education beyond high school. This money is incalculable and invaluable to our students in so many ways. I want to thank Mr. Guerra, his lovely wife Lisa, who are dear friends of ours. My wife Jody's in the back over there. They're dear friends of ours. We've come to know them over the past almost 10 years. And this leadership, the change from Mr. Hinkle, he and his lovely wife George are here, to the Guerras is an incredible thing to watch when you watch another local community member coming up from our old neighborhood, right, Gabe? Coming up from our old neighborhood where we both grew up and take the helm of this historic institution in banking. What an incredible thing. What an incredible thing to be a part of. Again, on behalf of Mary McQueen, our executive director of our foundation, Sandra Messbarger, my boss, my regent, and the entire board of regents, the entire Del Mar College family, we sincerely thank you and appreciate this donation, this most generous donation. Thank you to the shareholders. Thank you, everyone.
Mark beat me to the punch. I'd like to recognize my wife, Lisa. She's here. I saved the best for last. Lisa, thank you for being the backbone of our family. My young daughters, Lauren and Gabby, weren't able to be here tonight, and they were really upset with Daddy, so we've got some work to do. In closing, on behalf of the Kleberg Bank team, our board of directors, shareholders, King Ranch family, thank you for joining us this evening, the celebration of community. Please stay and enjoy the wonderful selection of food and drinks. Thank you. Have a great evening.